everybody. Welcome back. We're sitting in the Mindful Classroom together. And today I was intrigued, inspired, motivated by rereading James Clear's Atomic Habits. And in there, he mentions the idea of keeping a journal of things that you want to improve, things that you want to do. And this works for some and it creates work for others. But in it, he mentioned Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin famously came up with 13 necessary virtues that he saw in life. From there, he would journal every day what he was doing to approach those virtues, to improve upon himself in each of these virtues. That got me thinking, so I decided to look up the virtues and really try to take a look at them in 2024. How do they apply to our lives today? Was it a good idea? Are they good virtues to possess in life? And I was fascinated to see the timeliness of them. That if each one of us were to take time in our lives to every day look at how we could work with these qualities, we would see ourselves improving day by day, every day. So, very quickly, the virtues are temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. So what I think that I'm going to try to do is, for the next couple postings, break them up into 4 and look at a quality of 4 of them, discuss them, see where they fit in our lives. Do they work for us? Is this something that still applies? And then in the end, look at a big picture on what we can do to, I don't know if I'd say modernize them, but just maybe some of the examples to make them more current, based on what we know now from what he knew then and where we are. So, in the autobiography of Ben Franklin, we find a list of 13 virtues that Franklin thought were necessary or desirable, virtues that would create character traits that were considered morally good, valued for their ability to promote individual and societal well-being. I think that's an important one. We have to find that balance of how do we individually improve, but we need to make sure that our individual improvement isn't happening at the sake of society, the well-being of others, where we fit in. And you'll see how these kind of play in as we go a little bit further down. So I think the key here is finding that balance between making myself better, but not doing it harming anybody else, or not improving myself by putting other people down. I've always loved the idea and the concept of a rising tide lifts all ships. That if one person does better, we can all do better, and we can all see that improvement. So, first one, temperance. And Benjamin Franklin qualified that temperance as eat not to dullness, drink not to elevation. So, if we look at that in 2024, temperance. Temperance can apply into almost everything we do. And you're going to see temperance play out later on, I think, when we get to moderation. You'll see some repeats that take place in here. But eat not to dullness. We don't want to get ourselves into that stupor. It borders on gluttony. It really, I think it also takes away our appreciation of good food. Really savoring small, manageable pieces rather than eating to a point of just feeling bloated and lethargic and almost eating for the sake of eating, overeating for the sake of overeating because I can. And that creates a terrible mindset. That doesn't really work. I read somewhere, and obviously this is coming from an American mindset. The podcast stems from America, but I did read somewhere that if you look at the typical meal that an American orders when we go out to dinner in any of our restaurants around here, it's the equivalent of 2 meals. And the advice is that rather than starting to eat and then realizing, oh, I want to take some of this to go, because what happens is then we start to not even think about what we're eating. We have no awareness of the meal. We're just shoveling and eating and going. And before we know it, we finished everything. That if we were to, in the beginning, half the meal and have half of it wrapped up, and then eat what we have, and slow down and concentrate on each piece, where it is, we would enjoy and be much healthier. Now, the second part of temperance was drink not to elevation. And drinking not to elevation is drinking not to intoxication. Nowhere does he say avoid drinking. Some people, avoiding drinking is a necessary thing. But the idea is to have a glass of wine or to have a cocktail, but not drinking and drinking and drinking, because for any of us who have been there, we commit sometimes actions we really wouldn't have done were we not intoxicated. We say things that our mind's filter would have kept in and realized that this isn't something that I need to blast out to the public. This isn't something that needs to be said. And in general, our behavior is much better when we don't drink to elevation or drink to intoxication. Now, again, these are things we work on. Sometimes we'll go too far and we realize we dial it back. But I think if I look at that first concept of temperance, it holds really well in 2024. It's still a fantastic idea. Number 2, silence. Speak not but what may benefit others or yourself. Avoid trifling conversation. So really 2 parts in here. Speak not what may benefit others or yourself. Well, societally, we are not doing well on that one. I've posted before, it sickens me, the division that I see in this country and the fact that we're all very quick to criticize what we don't agree with instead of talking about what we do agree with, instead of saying what our principles are and why we support a certain person, or a candidate saying what his or her principles are and why you should vote for him or her, instead of why you shouldn't vote for this other person. Be a wonderful thing if we could put a more positive spin on those kinds of things. Same thing about people around us. Why do we say hurtful things? Why do we feel the need to at times criticize something that isn't for improvement? Constructive criticism is one thing. You see someone doing an action and you know that action's not good for them, so you make a suggestion that, hey, maybe you should think twice about this. I see that when you don't behave that way, you tend to do much better, and you're going to find yourself progressing much further. But oftentimes we just tear people down thinking it's going to lift us up, and it doesn't work that way. Tearing people down doesn't do anything for us. And in fact, to those who hear us doing it, it probably does the opposite thing. It probably, in their eyes, really hinders who they see us as being. And then to avoid trifling conversation. There's not always a need to engage in a conversation when there's nothing to say. That sometimes we can just sit with each other's presence. We can enjoy a sunset without necessarily stating an obvious platitude or something that comes along those lines. That just sharing somebody's presence is sometimes enough. Sometimes we don't need to say, great weather we're having, or looks like it might rain. Like the obvious things that we tend to do, the obvious things we tend to say. We don't always need to say them. Some things are definitely better left unsaid. And along on silence, I think that Thumper's mom, that we all go to from Bambi, had pretty good advice that if you don't have something nice to say, then don't say anything at all. How can we, that's maybe a way to look at that is how can we phrase things in the positive rather than in the negative? How can we make our statements a more uplifting instead of a divisive tearing down? So I will definitely say silence holds up perfectly. That is a virtue that we can work on a daily basis. Order. I'll tell you right now, I struggle with this one. Let all things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. So again, twofold. So first, let all things have their places. I hear that as having a sense of organization and order in your life. Not having a totally cluttered desk, knowing where things are when you need them. That's definitely one I struggle with. I tend to be the messy desk craziness, and almost when I sit down, sometimes it gets overwhelming because there's so many things here that are taking my attention from what I should be doing, from really what I'm sitting down with the intent to do. Where a nice, clear, simple desk, and you sit down with your list of to-do, and you don't have other things pulling you in that direction. You don't have those other things pulling you away. The second part of that, let each part of your business have its time. I think we've struggled with that one horribly, terribly. This was the idea that technology was going to set us free. This was the idea that technology was going to automate our activities. So rather than working 40 hours a week, we would be able to be as productive if we worked 30 hours a week. And instead, the constant access to email, always having your phone on you, has made so many people bleed over and work 50, work 60 hours a week, be expected to never be off the clock, always to be available for that business call. As he looks at that sense of order, I think that that's hurting us. It takes time away from our family. We get a call during dinner and we have to leave dinner to deal with something from the office when we really shouldn't have to be there, or answering emails late into the night, that you don't get a chance to compartmentalize your work life with your private life, with your relationship and your family life. And when those three bleed together and work is expected to oversee it, it creates a level of dissatisfaction and unhappiness. And that's a hard thing to battle because people expect us to always be available. People expect us to always be there. And it can go two ways. Maybe one of those things is that when we reach out, we understand that somebody may not get back to us until tomorrow when they're back in the office or they're back working. Or, from my life as a teacher, when a student messages me at 8 o'clock at night, that they understand they may not get messaged back until the next morning when I'm back to doing work and I'm back to looking at those things, because there's my time and there's that time that we need to kind of debrief. We need to just regulate ourselves and find what it is that energizes us so that we're better prepared. That's the biggest problem. When you're on the clock 24 hours a day, there's no energizing. You don't get to re-energize, and your battery just gets drained and gets drained until you get to that point of breakdown. The last one, resolution. Oh, by the way, if I go back to what I was doing, I think order fits. I think order is maybe even more significant in 2024 than it was when Ben Franklin put down these virtues. So the last one I want to talk about today is resolution. Resolve to perform what you ought. Perform without fail what you resolve. I kind of bring this to be a man of or a woman of your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you resolve to do something, make sure you do it. So resolve to perform what you ought. We fail on this one oftentimes with New Year's resolutions. We resolve to get in shape. We resolve to write more often. We resolve to find a side hustle, whatever it might be in your life. We tend to go out very quickly. We're excited about it. And then maybe a week, 2 weeks in, things begin to get in your way and we forget what we've resolved to do. This is to me one of those ones that you write down. You put it on a post-it note on your computer where you can see it. You put it on the bathroom mirror. But you remind yourself constantly what it is that you want to achieve and that you want to do. And then you don't make it a task to do it. So for instance, I want to start writing more. So what do? I carve out time every day to write, no matter what it is that I'm writing. If it's not the greatest thing that I'm writing, but it becomes a habit that I sit and I write. And I don't let anything interfere with that habit. If it's something that I've resolved that's important to me, then it is something that I make the time to do. Resolve can also be, and this is one that I see fall by the wayside, sadly. Resolve is to spend more time visiting family, to see your family more often, to spend time with friends more often, to catch up with old friends. These are all important qualities that, if we come back to, friendship and deep friendships are one of the things that they find constant among places that, when you talk about places that are blue zones where people live long and healthy lives, having a core group of friends that you stay in contact with and spend time with is a key one. So when you make those resolutions, remember Franklin's words: resolve to perform what you ought and perform without fail what you resolve. So there's numbers 1 through 4. I think they're wonderful. I think, as I said for the other 3, resolution holds up perfectly in 2024. It's one that we should stick with. Sorry about that. Need to mute things that I'm talking. I'd like to say I'll edit that out, but my skill set's probably not that strong. Tomorrow, we're going to come back again, and we're going to look at frugality, industry, sincerity, and justice. So, as we get ready to go our separate ways, maybe sit down, if you haven't done it already today. Think of a couple things for which you're grateful. 1, 2, 3 things. Small, large, whatever it might be. But try to adopt that gratitude mindset of every day reflecting on a couple things you're grateful for. If you really want to make it stick and you really want to train yourself, then perhaps write it down. Find a little journal book and just jot down 3 things for which you're grateful. I'm grateful for the Margate Farmers Market today. We did wonderful. Nice, fresh, organic fruits, vegetables, some scallops, burgers and bacon from a local farm. I am grateful for a warm bed with clean sheets. Seems like a simple thing, but you realize most of the world, people don't have that. And I am forever grateful right now for air conditioning, because I spent the month of July without it. And it reminded me how, at least without it downstairs, I had it upstairs to sleep. And it reminded me how grateful I am in my life. So thank you all. Be well. Talk soon. And reach out if you're interested in a coaching session to see if it works for you. On my last Anchor video, which I will connect to YouTube when I get off here and finish editing, I give you my information. I'll put it at the end of this as well, now that I'm saying that. That'll be something that for a while I'll just tag on the end of these videos. Have a beautiful day, friends.